Good afternoon, everyone. Bit of a change to our regularly scheduled thing. I feel like I'm saying that all the time at the minute, but realistically, we're sort of getting to that time of the year now where things are starting to peter off. But from our perspective, in terms of the teacher's perspective and stuff, I'm having to sort of do more things about getting ready for the next year and stuff like that. So that's why I sort of not necessarily putting as much focus on this as I was, a big chunk of the time. And realistically, we've done everything that we needed to. This is all just gravy, isn't it? Really, the the extra stuff we're doing. However, I did want to talk to you about some stuff because I thought, opportunity to still cover some stuff with you. So if you will oblige me, hopefully it'll help you in the second year. As I said, I'm talking about sort of further on second year topics now. I'm not doing everything. I'm just picking up sort of bits that I think will be quite useful just to mention to you now, so that when you actually get to that point in the second year, no matter if you're at college, whether you're at home or whatever, we can still help you out with it and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're going to get straight into it. We're going to be talking about change today. And change is one of the most damaging things that a business can do, but also is inevitable. So it's something that is really, really important and really quite frightening for businesses to do. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about it basically, but there are a couple of bits of theory that I want to talk to you about of theorists who say, oh well, you could probably do it like this, you could probably do it like that. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Now there is a lot of learning objectives on here. We're not going to go through every one of them, but you can see, explain causes of change between business, including change of size of business, change of ownership, developments of technology, market changes, consumer tastes, legislation, blah, 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 blah. Loads and loads and loads of different stuff on there. All right. So feel free to pause and have a look at them if you want. But basically, it's the same thing as we always do. It's analysing what the actual problems are, discussing them, looking at the benefits and disadvantages, and just trying to understand what the damage change could do to a business, but also the opportunities as well, as we are pretty versed in this really now, isn't it? I think this is the first time we've ever had a second page of learning objectives, but there's lots of things. But essentially, yeah, the couple of different theories that we're going to talk about though, Story's 4 different approaches, and Lewin's 3-step approach. Not my favourite bits of theory, not the most mind-blowing bits of theory, but they're okay. So let's have a little look at them. All right. So first things first, we're going to have a little look at HMV. All right. And we're going to have a little look at HMV. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Talk about them as an example. Now, I don't know if you know this, but a while ago, this was from January 2013, and I bring these up because it's quite important, but because this happened again after this. But HMV, the music shop, went into administration. Now, what does administration mean? Can you remember what it means? It means that basically the company is not in a good position, and they need to do something with it to either they appoint administrators, so an outside company will come into the business and they will try and either turn it round to some extent to what they can do. If the brand is good enough, if someone maybe wants to buy it, they'll try and get it into a position where it's sellable. Or the administrator's sole job is to get as much money out of that business as they physically can to pay back debts to whoever they owe them to. Okay, so that's what administrators will do. I always thought it sounds like a quite interesting job being an administrator, but HMV and film chain music and film chain to appoint administrator. And here they are. It says music and DVD chain HMV to appoint administrator, making it the latest casualty on the high street and putting about 4,500 jobs at risk. Now, in terms of this, the reason I wanted to draw your attention to this is because it says it's been in financial crisis for more than a year, and on the 13th of December warned against faced a possible breach of bank loan agreements, sending its share price plummeting. The retailer, whose first store was opened in London's Oxford Street in 1921, has faced intense competition from online retailers, digital downloads and supermarkets in recent years. And that's what I wanted to draw your attention to, really, because the first thing that we need to be talking about, the first thing that we really need to think about is how much change is forced on us. And we are living in it now, aren't we? How much of this change was forced on us? We didn't have a choice about this. And a lot of our things in life, a lot of the things that, hopefully the major things in your life you have a decision over, but, things like redundancies and things like big changes to technology or things like that could really, make it so that you either don't have a job, that your job has to change, that the company that you have is no longer needed. And if we think about someone like, even someone like, Netflix would be a really good one. HMV was from a time when Netflix didn't exist. Do you remember Blockbuster Video and people like that, where you used to rent DVDs, where you used to rent VHS, or is that before your time now? It's difficult for me to remember at this point. At what time did we stop doing that? Are you still of the generation that would have remembered that? But if you're not, there used to be stores that you used to go to, and you used to borrow DVDs, just rent DVDs, and it was a good business. It was a worthwhile business for them, and they were a massive company, Blockbuster Video. But unfortunately, the technology changed, the expectations of the marketplace changed to the point where consumers were not happy or not content or not even interested with what Blockbuster Video could actually give to them. And what they wanted instead was the streamable access at any time kind of means that we're so used to now. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Maybe if Blockbuster Video had been slightly more forward thinking, then perhaps they would be still around. But how do we know what's going to be the next big thing? If I'd have talked to you, 20 years ago about streaming, we wouldn't have known what you were talking about. What do you mean streaming? What do you mean DVDs? What do you mean Blu-ray? What do you mean 4K? What do you all this new technology? So a lot of the time, change is not by choice, which is weird, isn't it? Because you'd seem to think that, it's reasonable to think it is. So in terms of this, there is two different options, really, of what we want to do. And if you remember, I think we talked about change to an extent earlier on. I think this is the previous video when we talked about change a little bit. But what we want to be seeing is probably more of the right-hand side one, so the incremental change. So incremental change is where we go up a little bit. We make a change, we sort of get used to it. We make a change, we get used to it, we make a change. So the overall, changes are never that significant that we completely change the way we work and completely change everything, So change occurs over a period of time in incremental stages. The other option, which is what a hell of a lot of businesses tend to do, and especially will be doing in this period now, straight after lockdown, straight after this redundancy period kicks in and things like that, and jobs are really hard to come by, we've got this step change occurs rapidly. Okay, so in terms of that will be a case of, it will be a significant change that we don't really get a chance to really get used to. Whereas we are used to the right-hand side one, where there is little changes and we get used to them. This is what we are living through at the minute, a step change, a massive change in terms of external factors which have completely changed the way we work. He says change in business can be gradual, small incremental changes, with an evolution rather than a revolution, but some changes are brought on by internal changes and some by external. Either way, there will be effect on the company. And in terms of that, if we opt for the big change, if we opt for the thing which, I say we opt for it, if a big change, excuse me, go on, don't just stop there, go on. I know. You're covering them up. Go on. Up here. Go on. Sorry about that. If we sort of get that side of it, where we are having to change significantly and without the ability to, or the opportunity to react to that, you can see what's happening now, can't you? You can changes to efficiency, change to mental health, changes to people's jobs, people's lives, and there was pushback from this, wasn't there? So it says internal causes of change. So what could actually happen within the business which could cause some change? Well, it says, first of all, let's have a think about our management styles. Can you remember these? So if we've got different types of leadership styles, we might have more of a democratic leadership style. A new leader comes in, we might have a new management structure come in where they're more laissez-faire, or they're more democratic or more autocratic, or whatever it is, in which case, if that's happening, then that will probably be quite a significant change rather than that incremental change. It's probably just going to come on all at once. And you see this quite a lot in businesses where they'll get a new managing director and it'll just change. Next one's new technology, especially in sort of production, things like that, but also, in other things like we said with Blockbuster, the streaming thing, completely knocked them for six, just completely destroyed the business, really, because there's no need for them anymore. New technology such as robotics may change production processes, redeployment, redundancies, that kind of stuff. We've got a change of ownership. such as becoming a PLC. Now, right back to the start of when we started everything, PLC, do you remember Public Limited Company? They're on the stock exchange. The cat's meowing. You know, going to that process of being maybe a limited company or a privately owned company of some kind, and only having to worry about a few shareholders, to a PLC, a massive company where they've got maybe hundreds of thousands of shareholders, is going to be a marked change, isn't it? It's going to be a significantly different beast that you're having to deal with, and the expectations of you as a management team, you as an employee, will be different, because you'll be trying to satisfy different stakeholders, won't you? As a business grows, new level of managers might be required to open new factories and things like this, but we've got the changes in the business size is quite important. If it was a small business, you see this quite a lot, small businesses trying to get bigger, and it never works, because a small business can be really successful if it's got you to run it. You know, you might have your own little baby. You know, you think, well, okay, right, I'm gonna sell tea towels, and they're gonna be the best tea towels ever, and I'm gonna have one shop, and I'm gonna give the best customer service that I can get. Okay, well, yeah, you're doing really well. Tea towels are becoming really, really sought after. But then we've got, wait a minute, now need 2 shops, because there's opportunities over there that I can't do, so we're going to need 2 managers. Well, automatically, when you've got 2 shops, you've doubled the workload, but you can't be in 2 places at once, so you're going to have to get someone else on board, aren't you? So if you get someone else on board, then you're going to risk the competitive advantage, which in this case might have come from you as a person giving that customer service and things like that. So yeah, it happens quite a lot. Businesses do struggle when they give that power over to other people and things like that. It's a shame, really, because it's a good opportunity for them, really, to try new things and things like that. But it's just, it changes from just being the skill isn't in creating a good business, then it's managing a range of businesses, which is it's a completely different skill, isn't it? Okay, so using the following as possible prompts: cause, effects, response to problems. I'd like you to have a go at this. Okay, so just pause the video, have a little go at it. I'll go through some basic stuff with you, but I want you to have a go at it. It says, so let's do the first one together, and then you can have a go at the second one. So it says, changing the workforce, new skills needed. Okay, so let's say that there is a need for some new skill for whatever example. Now, the effect of that will be us having to maybe go on a recruitment drive, something like that. Or essentially, if we look at the effect, changing the workforce, the effect of that, the new skills are required. So in terms of that, what new skills are required, we could give an example, couldn't we? We could come up with something, and then the response would hopefully be us doing a recruitment drive that would be based on whatever those skills were, or trying to train up those people in the business. Maybe we'd have to come up with a training thing. Maybe we'd have to come up with an external thing. An external training provider, or we'd have to do it in-house, depending on the type of company it is, depending on our resources and ability to access stuff. Problems with it, though, is if you start getting new people, and you might naff off the people who already work for you, and if you if you don't get new people, and if you just try and train people up, then people might not want to be trained. People might go, well, I don't want to be trained, I don't want to do this job, I like my job, I don't want to do anything new. And so you've got that, you're going to have to come up with something, aren't you? How are you going to fix the problem? So if we are having to do that, then what could we do to fix it? Well, probably the response from the company would have to be something like, they would ask for volunteers probably to begin with. That would probably be sensible. Ask people if they wanted to do it. But also, bring people on board in terms of involve them in the decision-making process. It's more of a mayor kind of thing, isn't it? In terms of, involve people in the decision-making process. They like it. Okay, now we're on to external sources of change, or causes of change. Now, in terms of this is a bit like Pestle. Anything in these, with it being an external environment, can change the business's lookout. It can change out, how they are, the way that we work, quite considerably. So first of all, let's start at the top. It says new technology. New technology such as improved ICT has allowed changes to online ordering rather than in-store shopping. Brilliant opportunity, but also a threat to businesses, isn't it? If you're a company that can utilize this, things like Ocado, fantastically efficient kind of business and able to do it. Places like Amazon have really become dominant in that kind of market. But if you're a company that hasn't been able to do this, you are really being pushed out of the market, aren't you? And the high street is dying because so many people are deciding to go elsewhere, aren't they? Labour market. Now, it says, for example, Brexit might result in less migrant workers. I think it's reasonable to say now that because this was made a while ago, it's reasonable to say at this point that, we have already got significantly less workers in the UK due to Brexit, even though we're still in the process of trying to negotiate deals and things like that. Not just from the fact of, the trying to get them to, sign up to whatever we want and blah, 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 but also physically just the mentality that goes from, they don't feel wanted in this country anymore. So those people who were doing very useful jobs to us, those people who keep saying, immigrants are taking everyone's jobs. Well, now that those jobs may be on farms and things like that, because that's one of the, places that people have been saying that they haven't got people access to them at the minute, that there isn't people to pick food and things like that. Well, I wonder how many people from that group of people who were complaining about migrants taking people's jobs will want to then go and work on fields. I don't know, but already farmers have been saying that they're struggling for it. So it's an important one. No one chose that. There was a lot of businesses that didn't want this and didn't know the extent. None of us knew at the extent of the damage that it might do, and we still don't know that, do we? So can you see how that change could? I mean, I don't know how it could be positive in the long run, having less access to things and having less tariffs, but ultimately, we have to be ready for it. So it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Then we've got down here changes in the economic conditions of the country. This is something that we're going to have to deal with and has already happened and is currently happening now. An example is a recession that might force a change to reduce costs through delayering. That's what a lot of companies are actually doing now. So the redundancy process, the delayering, getting rid of management layers, closing factories, closing bits of, going into retrenchment, getting rid of, rationalisation, getting rid of parts of the company that maybe you're not using or maybe aren't that good or efficient or that you don't really need at this moment in time. The problem with doing that is that you might miss opportunities, but it depends on how serious it is. I mean, if you're in a global recession and there is if you don't, you might not see tomorrow, essentially. So you need to be ready for it, don't you? You might need to cut your costs at an alarming rate, in which case redundancy is a lot of the time the best option. Existing competitors can change strategy or new businesses can enter the market. Interesting one, isn't it? Imagine if Apple decided to go into a market that it's never been in before. That would be a very dangerous thing for those companies, wouldn't it? In terms of, having to deal with them and having to deal with the massive might that is Apple from that regard. What else, though? You've got changing consumer tastes and trends. This can be a big one, a very dangerous one that we can't really control, really. I mean, you can control it to some extent, and some businesses have the ability to change consumer taste depending on how dominant in their market they are. If Apple have changed the way that people look at, phones, they've kind of designed the iPhone, and everybody has moved towards that the smartphone should look like iPhones. So, with laptops, most people look like, laptops look like MacBooks now because of Apple. It's an interesting concept of how much power they have and how much dominance they have and how much they have an impact on us as people, and what our tastes are and things like that. But think about it from your perspective. How much would it really take for you to change the trend or things like that? And it says at the end here, it says new laws can force a change on the business. For example, the living wage, national living wage, forced up wages, which may force businesses into delayering. You've got to remember, when we say the living wage, it's the minimum wage is what they mean, and they called it the living wage because it was a clever PR move that sort of wasn't very clever. But if we're talking about the minimum wage here, it's not just that. Don't forget, when they put the minimum wage up, they've also got to put in things like pension contributions as well, which is a legal obligation that businesses have to pay into a private pension for you. So if they put your wages up, which they have to do, then they have to put your national insurance contributions go up and your pension contributions go up. All things which businesses have to legally be involved with. They can't have an option not to. So when you change people's statutory requirements, statutory laws, statutory entitlements, then you have a real problem from a financial perspective, because one employee might not be a bad thing, but say you've got 20,000 employees, even if they put them up by £1 each, that's £20,000 already. That's just a once, and that's going to be every month. Do you see what I mean? It can massively increase the costs, in which case we're going to have to change things quite quickly, aren't we? Okay, couple of other ones for you to have a go at. As I said, not going to go through them here because it gives you an opportunity to have a go at it. But basically, think about it. What's the effect of that? What's the response for the company? And what's the negative? Because remember, that negative there is your however, isn't it? That's your evaluation point. Okay? Now, distinguish between planned and unplanned change. Now, as I said, you are living through unplanned change now. Even if you're watching this in 10 years' time, you will remember, or you will have been around, or you will have heard of, 2020 being the year of the global pandemic and the lockdown and things like that. We don't know what the world is going to be, in the future at the moment, do we? But it says planned change is created internally and is structured and timetabled. Clear objectives for the change are established, timelines created, and resources applied to creating the change. Now, unplanned change, though, which is what we're living through at the minute, isn't it, occurs in response to a shock to the business and is often unstructured and under-resourced because they're not expecting it. A shock could be external, such as an introduction of new technology by competitors, or internal, such as a key worker suddenly leaving. And that happens more than you'd think with the key workers leaving, especially in the video game industry and things like that. If you're interested in video games, you'll probably know about Hideo Kojima and Konami with the Metal Gear Solid franchise and the problems that went along with that. But a massive multi-million pound company and a massive multi-million pound key player essentially in that industry and worldwide successful game developer decided to leave, and they had this argument and things like that. But it's massively impacted the reputation of that company and realistically people's faith in them, whether they'd even want to play another game by Konami without Hideo Kojima, the guy, being involved with it. If that's not, if you're not interested in it, that's totally fine. But ultimately, you remember, the more you understand about a different range of topics, a different range of businesses, then the more able you are to answer questions in that exam, because you'll think, oh, that's such and such a body, or that's such and such a body. So try and open your mind, try and do that research, have some businesses ready to be able to throw at an exam question. So effects of change, it says shorter product life cycles. Now, it says here, answer the question, I think that's it would have been in the book, but let's have a look. It says shorter product life cycles. So if we have a technological change, it can shorten the product life cycles, can't it? If we have a change of trend, it can be... so change of trend, change of technology, competitors doing something, because already, if, say, for example, you bring something out and then your competitor brings out something that's significantly better, then not many people are going to be wanting to still buy your stuff, are they? They're not going to be going, oh yeah, I want to go and buy, an older version of your product, because, they're not going to do it. They're not. So it's an important one to remember that, isn't it? How much of your product range is just based on what we're doing this year, or is it a 10-year project, or is it a 20-year project, or is it something, what can we actually physically do in terms of that? It's one to consider. We've also got diminished brand loyalty. So if we make the wrong change, if we affect our reputation significantly, then we can have that diminished brand loyalty. We've got to be careful about what we do and how we respond to stuff, because remember, we've not only got brand loyalty from our customers, but we could have a decreased one from potential employees or employees as well, because if you make people redundant, then you're going to naff other people off, aren't you? And potentially you might go, well, don't go and work for them. Did you remember what they did just after the coronavirus outbreak? Do you see what I mean? And that kind of stuff. So you've got to be aware of that. We've got retraining the workforce. It can be a big issue, can't it? If there is a significant change, we're going to have to do that retraining. We know how much it costs to retrain people. It's a very, very expensive bit of kit, and it's very, very, very hard to get people on board with the change as well, and to get people to agree to be retrained and things like that, because that's the hardest bit, is getting people to agree to do it. I think one of the positive things of the this coronavirus thing, if there is a positive, is the fact that people are having to use technology for the first time. And this technology's been out there for ages. It's been ready to be used, and yet people haven't used it, have they? And it's a massive shock. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do all this if that hadn't have happened. So there are positives as well, but it's hard to get people to use them sometimes. Flexible workforce. How can businesses get round having needing a flexible workforce? They could do the retraining. They could have 0 hours contracts. They could get contract staff on. They could have meetings with people, try to avoid redundancy by making them more flexible and things like that. So multi-skilling people. We could also subcontract work out, couldn't we? If we needed a flexible workforce that we didn't have and we were getting on more and more stuff, we could potentially subcontract work out to other people. And the need to comply with constantly changing legislation is always going to be an issue for us. You need to be in a strong financial position to be able to do that. If the government click their fingers and just increase your costs exponentially, which, remember, the bigger the business, the more that's going to have an effect on you. Because usually the government don't change the minimum wage by 1p. It's usually by about 50p an hour per person, plus pension contributions and national insurance and the rest. It's significant, and I know a lot of big businesses were struggling, but a lot of small businesses were just saying, well, we can't actually afford to pay people if you do this. Did it stop them? No. Explain the importance of managing change effectively. So what we need to do here is, if we decide that we're going to let's go with the internal one, and we decide that it's a structured one, it's something that we've chosen to do. We've got to get our employees trained. Not only trained for internal, but we also got to recruit the right people, haven't we? So that's a really, really important one. So if we can be ready, because remember, we don't know, prepare for the unexpected kind of things. Yeah, but we can't be ready for every eventuality. But there are certain eventualities we can be ready for. Like a global pandemic wasn't unreasonable to be ready for. It was only a matter of time. It's crazy that this has never happened before. Really, it's happened in other parts of the world, and yet the country seems so ill prepared for the situation. You think, well, why the hell did we not think about this before? Why was no one ready? Why did we not have contingency plans in place? Considering we know about contingency plans, we know the importance of having contingency plans for things which are reasonable to happen. Thinking that there might be a global shutdown because of a serious virus is something quite, well, it's definitely they're going to have them in the future, aren't they? It's only took this thing for them to have that. But yeah, I think in the future we'll probably have more. Increased research and development expenditure. So if we decide to go down it, remember, if we've chosen to go down that road, and if we've chosen to we're going to develop some new technology, then there is going to be increased research and development. But if we've got that, then it might be a brilliant opportunity to have a look at how can we be more effective, how can we be more efficient, how can we be more, have the ability to sort of take on our competitors on this. Is it a new opportunity for competitive advantage? Potentially, so it's not always a bad thing. There could be some positives out of it as well. And then we've got down here additional capital investment. Remember, capital is money, or investment, and usually when we talk about capital investment is the physical, thing like technology or machinery and things like that. New technology that we could go into, relocation, may need additional finance and things like that. That's true. We might need additional finance, but simultaneously, if we already have finance in place, or if we are in a good position in terms of, our ratios. So do you remember back to ratio analysis we talked about? If you can't remember, go back and have a look at some of the videos. We've already talked about them. But when we talk about ratio analysis in terms of like, the amount of assets that we have in comparison to the amount of liabilities, and our ability to meet short-term debts and things like that, if we are already in a good position with that, then it means that we're ready to take on the world, doesn't it? If we're not in a good position like that, if we're in a position where we can't take on the on competitors, or we're just waiting for them to take us out, then that's a very dangerous position to be in that regard, isn't it? It's a frightening position to be in. So it depends on whether you've seen them as, okay, whether it is preconceived change, a change which is out of choice, or a change which is forced on you because of a necessity, a change. But I think even if you're talking about a change that's out of choice, it's usually as an effect of something going on anywhere, an internal or external. Even if you choose to do it, it's usually there's not usually many changes you would make out of choice just because you feel like it, or just because you see a competitive advantage. You might do, but a lot of the time is if you see a competitive advantage, that's because something's happened, something changed in that external environment or internal environment, and you've gone, oh, this is an opportunity. Do you see what I mean? Okay. Okay, so first little bit of theory. You've got stories for methods of implementing change. Now, Story had 4 different techniques, and basically what he said was that there was 4 different ways that people could react, or that management could react to trying to change a business. And what he said was, right, well, first of all, the first thing that we need to do is if we try to change absolutely everything, we're going to call that a negotiated total package. All right, so a significantly large change, but because it's a negotiated one, in terms of we want to change something significant, consultation with employees and trade unions is really, really important. This. So he's saying, look, we know that people can be really dangerous to our business. We know that if we don't get people on board, then they can really hold up our change. They can really restrict our ability to change the company, and they can really damage our ability to do anything positive. So why don't we do a negotiated total package in terms of get the employees, get the trade unions on board and negotiate what we think is going to happen, and therefore, it will be a positive way forward for everyone. Now, in terms of this, it says the second one, we've got negotiated piecemeal initiatives. Now, the piecemeal initiatives is basically smaller changes. Like we looked at right at the start, where it was just slightly up and then a change, and then up and then a change, and then an up and change, and things like that. That is your negotiated initiative. So, smaller changes that are implemented when a problem arises. Employees are consulted and offer benefits. Okay. It's basically the first 2 ones are basically, do you want to have significant change in the business? If you want significant change, is it worth trying to get your employees and trade unions on board? Do you think they're powerful enough to really warrant coming on board? Because remember, if you've not got a trade union, do you really need to negotiate with them? There is an argument for doing it because of the ethics side of it and trying to get people on board and whether it's going to be useful for your business. But if we're talking about low workers, there's an argument for just pushing it through as well. And that is the other 2. So Story said imposed piecemeal initiatives in terms of management force, smaller changes on employees. Now, with this one, it's easier to do piecemeal initiatives. It's easier to force piecemeal initiatives than it is total package, because if you impose total package, that is going to have a significant change on employees, and it is also going to probably almost certainly find the most hesitance, the most backlash from it. So what you need to think about before you make your decision, because Story said, look, there's only 4 ways of doing it. You either consult people or you don't. You either do it big or you don't. You either go, piecemeal or you go big. So when you're deciding what to do, you need to think about 3 things. And he said the time it's going to take to do it, the resistance that you're going to find, and the cost. So and this is where your AO2 comes in, this is where your AO4 comes in, that when you're talking about do I have the ability to force my employees to do this? Are you in a position to do that? Are they low-skill, low-wage people? Are there many of them? Are they unionised? Are they likely to kick off? How is the employment in the country at the minute? So, for example, at the moment, if you were going to, I've talked to a couple of friends, but one specifically who's been going through changes in his business, and he said at this moment in time, there is imposed piecemeal initiatives, essentially. Small changes on employees, quite significant in changes in terms of pay and things like that. But he did say it would be imposed piecemeal. They haven't completely changed the company. They haven't, they've talked about it. He was talking to me the other day about it, and he says there is a total package, an imposed total package change that's sort of been threatened. But, ideally what you want to go with is that negotiated, because hopefully you'll get people on board and things like that, won't you? I don't know if you can hear that beeping in the background. Okay, so you've got to make a decision on that. Do you have the ability or the time or the resources, and do you think you can do it? If you can do it effectively, force it through, because it's going to be cheaper. It's going to, it might have a bit of resistance, but who cares, because it's not going to make a difference, is it? The window cleaners here. I don't know if you can hear that. Do you ever do that thing where you're frightened of window cleaners and you hide when they come? Okay, so we're nearly done. Stick with me. We've got when we're talking about managing change, there's also another little bit of theory which basically just where's the force coming from? Have we got a driving force or have we got sort of a pulling force almost? We call them driving forces for change and driving forces against change, but really in this one, are you another way you could see it is, are you being pulled into doing something or are you being pushed into doing something essentially? So if you or pushed away from doing something. So it says here, driving forces for change. We've got Porter's 5 forces. Can you remember Porter's 5 forces? They were all about how attractive a new place can be, a new market would be to a company. If you can't remember, go back. We've got a video on it. Market conditions. What's the market like? How's the economy doing? How are other competitors doing? Is it a saturated market? What kind of market are you in? What's your market share like? Customer needs and tastes, are they loyal to you? Do they have you got a really good brand image, or do they not really, stay with you? Competitiveness, as we said, market share, ability to compete. How do other people see you? Are you a price taker or are you a price giver? Objectives, so what are you physically trying to do at the moment? And finally, competitive advantage, where do you get it from? Where you finally getting your competitive advantage from? All those things will force you to change, because if you are not changing to move towards these things, then you are initially, you're failing in what you're trying to achieve, aren't you? So if you understand what your customer needs and tastes are, but you're not abiding by them and you're not satisfying them, you're going to have to change, because if you don't, you'll fail. If you are not, if you're doing management by objectives, if everybody knows where we are in the same on the same hymn sheet, everybody knows what we're working towards, but you are not achieving those objectives, then you need to change, because if you don't, you'll fail. Can you see? All of those are really important. Now it says driving forces against change. People don't like change. People don't want to change. They like to stay as they are. So, I mean, think about it. Think about it in your own lives. When you left school, you didn't like it. I know you might have said, "Oh yeah, it was good and everything." "Oh yeah, I can't wait to leave school and everything." But it was all you think. It was what you're about. When you leave college, it's a frightening time, because you might be excited about what you're going to go on to, but it's leaving home and things like that. Buying a house, whatever it is. It's for the frightening things. So employees. Responses to change will never be positive, or very rarely positive anyway. As I said, it's very difficult to get people to use technology and things like that. Really difficult, unless they're forced into it. Industrial disputes. So are they unionized? Do they have the ability to stop you? Could they go out on strike and things like that? Key resistance is people. It's got to keep it in mind. Role of leaders and managers and HR function is key to successfully managing change and things like that. So keeping in mind when you're talking about it, do you have decent HR policies which will satisfy people and stop people wanting to engage with this fight with you, essentially? Or are you in a position where you're very dominant in your workplace and they're ununionized anyway, and they can't do anything as well? If you are, there's more scope for changing, isn't there? Okay, so last little bit of theory I want to talk to you about as we before we finish today. So one of the key resistors to change are employees. Why would they resist a change in business? Well, it's because people are self-centered and they don't want to. They want to focus on them. They don't want to be doing more work for less money. What are the main reasons for employees resisting change? It is that, isn't it? It's the comfortability. It's the ability to control the thing. It's as well. Mayo's got a point. Remember when he was talking about the social man? People like to be involved with the decision making as well. So if you just impose it on them, they might just do it out of bloody mindness. Like in terms of, I'm very much like that. If you involve me in the decision making process, then that's really good, and I'll be willing to go above and beyond for you. But if you force it on me, then I'm likely to just be pig-headed with you because it's annoyed me. and I don't think I'm unusual like that. A lot of businesses have lots of employees like that, in terms of, will just purposely try and frustrate the process because they're not happy about it. All you've got to do is bring me on board and everything will be fine. What other factors might cause resistance to change? It might be they might be frightened of what's happening. They might see that you have got other plans, so it might be a distrust. Do you remember we talked a while ago about expectancy theory and the ability for valence and stuff like that, about you need to be certain, you need to be confident that you are abiding, you need to be confident that whatever you give, whatever you promise, whatever you think you're going to get from the business, that they actually do that. So that can be a really big thing as well, can't it? And what are the possible knock-on effects of a business resistance to change? Well, it could be that the change fails. It could be that the business it doesn't have the ability to quickly respond to changes in the marketplace. It doesn't have the ability to change to whatever's happening, and because of that, they could fail. Or lose competitive advantage, and someone else could mop it up for you. Okay, so we're nearly there. Last little bit of theory I want to talk to you about is Lewin's model for change. Now, Lewin's model it's very much like we've already talked about. So, story before, it is story, isn't it? We talked about. Yeah, story. They say, right, there's 4 different methods you can use. You know, you've got your big change negotiated, small change negotiated, big change not negotiated, small change not negotiated. That's your options, right? Now, Lewin doesn't disagree with that, but what Lewin says instead is what you need to do is it doesn't matter how big the change is really. What you need to do is you need to get people on board. You need to explain what the change is going to be, get people ready for it. And when it says unfreeze, what it really means is that everything's the same at this point. So in terms of when we're looking at the thing like that, you know, this is a line when everything's the same and then we're just about to go up. So when we unfreeze, we go up, but at the minute we're just like this. So everything's the same. So ensure people are ready for the change and ensure people are on board with it, okay? Then we execute the change, but really important, execute the intended change. Don't try and get loads of changes in. Don't change it in a way that you said you weren't going to, because then you'll naff people off. It goes back to expectancy theory again, doesn't it? You need to be talking about bring the change in that you said you were going to do, and don't try and find a way of changing it, because if you change the change that you were going to enact, then people won't trust you anymore, and you affect the industrial relations that you're going to deal with. And then when you get to the new place that we are, so we've just gone up to the change and then we get to our new spot that we're happy with, then we freeze it again. So we ensure that the change becomes permanent, because a lot of businesses also have a hell of a lot of people come through businesses, especially new management teams and things like that. They'll come in with brilliant ideas, or what they think is brilliant ideas. They'll come in, give you the okay, this is what we're going to do, like you've never really thought about it. If you've got a part-time job, you've probably experienced quite a lot of this. They'll come in like you've never thought of it, like a brilliant idea, which to the rest of you, you know why that doesn't work, but they'll do it, make the change, and then as soon as they back off, you change it back. In which case, what was the point of going through it in the first place? There wasn't, was there? That's the problem. So Lewin's point on this is, if you can get people on board to begin with, then execute the intended change, and then freeze it again to make sure that change is permanent, then hopefully, it doesn't matter if you're doing massive changes, it doesn't matter if you're doing small changes, but hopefully whatever you do, it will be successful. So strategies for successful change include employee commitment, increased research and development expenditure, increased human resource management expenditure, capital investment, project managers or champions. So this is all about trying to get people. You need to be aware that you're going to have to spend money on it. You need to invest in the change. You need to invest in people, because if you don't, then it's not going to be successful. Okay? Now, how could it be evaluated? Well, we could have a look at it of whether it, with the increased delivery times, in terms of we have an increased ability to do this, we've actually decreased the amount of time it takes us to deliver things. Production defects have decreased and things like that. So maybe we've increased, maybe we've instilled some kind of quality control system or a quality assurance system or something like that. Customer satisfaction surveys, so if people are happier with us, market share, sales turnover, profit, and things like that. So it's all about, we can check it from a range of things. What I need to draw your attention to with this, though, is don't forget that you bring the other theory in. Don't see it as itself. Don't see it as an individual thing. It's gone quite dark in here. Don't see it as an individual thing, though. Don't see change as an individual thing. Bring in the bits of theory from other places, and it's really important to do that. Okay, we're going to call it there. I hope that was helpful for you, but I just wanted to draw your attention to those two little bits and get you thinking about change and how it can be affected in businesses and things like that. Okay, so as I said, at this moment in time, I'm just deciding what to do in terms of moving forward. But if you've got any ideas for videos you'd like, or if you need any help with anything, you know where I am. please get in touch with me, and I will try and sort you out. Okay? Peace.